we're in a conversation where there's clearly a group of people who don't want health reform. They don't want undocumented workers to get care. They don't want poor people to get care. They don't want women to have access to birth control. They don't want those things. It's not about the conversation. It's not about the persuasion. And I think there's some really good examples of exactly what Amy's talking about working when you're talking to people, like in South Dakota, where if you looked at polls, you would have said that the majority of people in South Dakota were anti-choice. But when referenda there were trying to be passed to actually ban, not only abortion, but probably in the end contraception, in fact, what it turned out is that most people, irrespective of what they felt personally, this is why I think the whole pro-life, pro-choice thing is so passe. It's like, what does that really mean anyway? Seriously, I think the language we use is very rigid and unimaginative, and also it locks us back into the exact things that you're talking about, which is to say that in South Dakota, a really creative and sometimes, criticized leader there said, I'm going to talk to people differently. I'm going to get the same ends by talking to people differently and preserve women's access to choices. Now, whether or not you agree with that particular strategy, the point is that these polls tell us that most people, they say they're so pro-life, but many of them don't even know what that means. But what they really think is, I may not want to have an abortion, but I don't want to take the decision away from somebody else. It's for them to decide with their doctor, their clergy, their family, or their dog, whoever they're talking to. And so let them decide. I'm not trying to be flip. It's kind of like we have this routine that we go through, right? We have the routine of what's moral. And that moral language is like locked into a certain space. So if you hear people saying, well, abortion is a moral issue, well, moral according to whose moral code and in what moral situation according to what moral calculation. So we get locked in these rigid frames. And then when we engage with those people who want those rigid frames to work for their agenda, which is no health reform, down the line, then we're in a losing battle because we are going to influence those people in Congress who don't want to step out of that rigid frame in a way that they're going to back into a corner and say, I don't want to deal with this, I'm taking it off the table. So I do agree with Amy totally that we have to have those conversations better and we have to work through those, but we have to step out of our own language to challenge those frames that we're using that feed back into the people who really don't, like John Boehner doesn't want to have a conversation about health reform. I don't care how bipartisan you wish you want to be, they don't want to do that. And it's kind of like,
shut it down.
Right, it's not about let's all gain for the American people. It is about, really stark politics. Again, my opinion. But so I think we have to figure out who are we really talking to and making compromises with on behalf of whom, and are they going to be compromises that really work for people where they are, and are they representing those people? And we just sat in one of these fora, or the one I was in earlier before the Women and Blogger ones, they were talking about this very compelling slide or PowerPoint about the connections between, lobbyists and people in office and the industry, and what proportion of people are circling through those. Now, of course, I know that stuff, but I never really looked at it in that way with those numbers, and I was shocked. And, then they had Shelley Pingree talking about exactly the same thing and how to fight against it. It really is a big problem. We're in that problem all the time. We can't accept that this is outside of that problem, and we have to break those frames in order to get outside of them and break them down and make them mean something different.